Gallant Says podcast live at youtube.com/Paul Gallant, also live at twitch.tv/Gallant Says. You can also catch the show in podcast form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, Stitcher, SoundCloud. You want to get in touch with the show, send me an email, gallantsays@gmail.com, or get after me on Twitter or the gram or TikTok at Gallant Says with any questions. It is 6 o'clock on May 8th of 2023. And if you want to get in touch with the show live, you got to be tuned in from 6 to 6:30, Mondays through Thursdays. We're debating doing shows on Sundays. Do I want to end my weekends that early? I don't know. Probably not. Got a couple of people in the chat already. I think that says boobsbot on twitch.tv/Gallant Says, Pauly MFG. And we got Skeeter sending some flames my way at youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Before I dive into the little Texans take that I had, I have a realization that I came to over the course of the weekend. And I'm finding out that boobsbot is actually Largo. Hi, Largo. I came to a realization that TikTok and all that awful lip syncing shit that you see online these days, it came from this. Was I perhaps drunk and or under the influence of a little puff in the moment? I can't say. I can't confirm. But this video right here, which you might remember from a long time ago, is the reason that TikTok exists. Do you see in the background what's going on? In the background, we currently have the Numa Numa guy. He is lip syncing along to Numa Numa. This video went viral. And I think that this is why people, I guess, appreciate what? Lip syncing? I don't even know. I really don't know what to make of it. All I know is that this became a thing, and that TikTok is very similar to this. Is this good? I mean, it's funny. This is funny. But how many people do you see online on TikTok that are essentially, you know, jamming to any song and lip syncing along a little bit, whether it's to an actual song or to some lines? I don't understand how this is appealing to anybody. Maybe that makes me an old person, but anyway. Anyway, I wanted to start off with a conversation about something that I saw on Twitter the other day that turned into something it shouldn't have been. And this has to do with CJ Stroud, second overall pick of the Houston Texans. But it also has to do with any organization that perhaps is bending over backwards to cater to its stars. The Texans on Friday of the NFL drafts took University of Houston Cougars wide receiver, I got the shirt on right now to pander a little bit, Tank Dell with the pick, the 69th pick of the NFL draft. Nice. Chancellor Johnson of KPRC posted this video of Tank Dell talking about CJ Stroud.
Like right after the combine, we was texting each other and stuff like that. And he was just telling me, like, man, he like how, well, he talked to me after the combine. He was just like, boy, I like how you run routes, like how you know, play football. You know, he said he been watching me and stuff like that. And then I told him vice versa, and, you know, I appreciated him and stuff like that. And then, like, he, I think it was, like, after he got drafted, you know, I sent him congrats. And then I was like, tell him come get me. I told him to tell him come get me and stuff like that. And then he was like, I got you, trust me. And then the next day, I think he called me, he FaceTimed me out of nowhere, like I texted him. Yeah, I texted him and he FaceTimed me. And then he was like, man, I told him I want you, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. So I was like, okay, it can happen. And then, you know, I got that call.
So, you hear that? Sounds like maybe CJ Stroud had a couple of ideas based off of people he saw and people he had conversations with at the NFL Combine and thought to himself, you know what? Why not? Fuck it. I'm going to go into the office and I'm going to tell D'Amico Ryans or Nick Caserio that I like this guy. Did the Texans listen? Did they say, okay, sure, CJ? Or did they pause everything that they were doing and say, that's brilliant, CJ? Burn their draft board and then write down, Tank Dell, we must take him. What do you think happened? They probably politely listened and then thought to themselves, we're just going to go with whatever evaluation we see as the best fit for the Houston Texans with our remaining draft picks, right? And I get it. Some people, you're going to try and tie 2 and 2 together and think, wow, the Texans, man, they're doing everything possible for their young quarterback. They're listening. This is a different Houston Texans team. Or you might think the other way and think, oh my God, Jesus, the Texans are listening to a rookie quarterback and are taking his advice to draft a sub 6 foot tall wide receiver. Fuck, what are we doing here? You might be in one of those two camps. I'm just telling you right now, don't be in either of those camps. Don't turn this story into something it's not. Don't do it. Sheena Herrera is commenting, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. He also sent a message to the Texans in December. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know, Sheena, that you're talking about Tank here. Tank sending a message to the Texans is not going to make the Texans all of a sudden interested in him. You know what's going to make them interested in him? The fact that he scored 17 touchdowns in college. The fact that he's a good returner. The fact that he's small and can fly. Those are the reasons that the Texans would be interested in an undersized guy like that. And I would look at the Texans drafting him as a result of their evaluations, scouting, etc. And here's where things get crazy. And this is why I get very frustrated being on the internet in 2023. Because an account like this one, it is at NFL Rookie, and if you see on the screen right here, WATXH. It's not even spelled right. Got a blue check mark that he's paying for. Sadly, this account has 85.8 thousand followers. I want to kill myself seeing that. Whatever, that's fine. Bring it back to this. This tweeted out the following. CJ Stroud and Tank Dell reportedly created a, quote, tight bond, end quote, while they were at the NFL Combine together. After Stroud was selected by the Texans, he had one demand. Think about that. A demand for their front office. We'll get back to that in a moment. He told them to go up and, quote, get, end quote, Tank Dell. Quoting one word. 2 rounds later, the Texans followed Stroud's request and took his wide receiver of choice. And then the very bottom, which is the way that you pander to an audience that's going to retweet it and like it because everyone likes to be in an echo chamber. The Stroud to Dell duo has some serious potential in Houston. And then there's like the blushed emoji. So that's a fucking stupid tweet. It's just a stupid tweet, clickbait. He quotes one word by saying he told them to go up and get Tank Dell. And earlier it says tight bond. There are 3 words quoted here, plus this idea that CJ Stroud demanded that the Houston Texans take Tank Dell, who is a sub 6 foot tall wide receiver who played in the AAC in the 3rd round. Demand that he took this guy the rest of the draft. Dumb. It's just dumb. Did CJ Stroud say, I like Tank Dell? Sure. Has Tank Dell perhaps written the Texans a letter at some point? Sure. And even with this little clip that the Houston Texans posted on their Twitter account, which I believe comes from Texans Radio. I think it's Nick Caserio talking to John Harris. I'm telling you right now, this clickbait stuff, you gotta ignore it.
It's funny you bring that up So when CJ was here on Friday for the introductory press conference, he finished up and we grabbed him for a few minutes and said, hey, can you just check on like 2 or 3 guys? Because there's a few that had reached out to them. So we said, hey, just out of curiosity, why don't you touch base with them, kind of just see what they think is going on. So, and then he got back to us and said, here's what's going on. And he was pretty close to being right. So to your question, John, like, absolutely. Like, if you trust the person that's giving you the information, then you're going to utilize it.
You might hear that and think, Paul, you're wrong. You're wrong here. Nick Caserio just admitted that if you trust the person that's giving you the information, you're going to utilize that. But the reason that the Texans made a pick is not to cater to the guy that they literally just drafted. And this is a problem in sports these days. Organizations that are bending over backwards to cater to the every whim of a quarterback or a star athlete. I know this because I was in Seattle, where lots of people who follow the Seattle Seahawks, who are offense intended and insufferably snobbish fan base that at times believes they are smarter than the room. They're not. You're not. You're like any fan base across the NFL. You just happen to have seen some success. Weirdly, though, all of that success had you questioning whether or not Pete Carroll was the guy for the future, and John Schneider, general manager of the team, was the guy for the future. They were wasting Russell Wilson's prime. A lot of you said it. They got to bend over backwards to make him happy. It's in one of those classic situations where I was right, but I didn't get to have my victory dance in Seattle because I was taken out back and shot. I was telling people that the Seahawks should not do whatever this guy says. Because Russell Wilson, who after Brian Schottenheimer was fired as offensive coordinator and before they hired Shane Waldron as the next offensive coordinator, had this to say about the offensive coordinator search. I think it's vital, it's critical, super significant, obviously, that I'm a part of that process. Coach and I have definitely been talking about that. John Schneider, too, as well. We've had some great dialogue about the thought process of who we want, the leader, the innovator, all that kind of different stuff that you want. I think that's the super critical thing, obviously, at this point in my career, because you spend every day with that person. As many hours as me and Shotty spent together. I'm going to miss the guy because we spent so much time together and worked so hard. The next person, whoever that is, it's really critical that we're on the same page at all times and always talking and vibing and really, really on the same page. Is it, though? Is it? Was it? I wonder what offensive coordinator the Texans actually would have been capable of, the Seahawks would have been capable of hiring in between the 2021 and 2022 season. I really do wonder if there was someone that was perhaps a better option than Shane Waldron. But I think anybody who watched the Seahawks this past season probably feels pretty good about sticking with Waldron and sticking with this coaching staff and sticking to their own process as opposed to bending over backwards for the whims of Russell Wilson, who would often offer suggestions such as sign expensive offensive linemen or sign/draft good wide receivers. Thanks, Russ. I appreciate that. You're bringing a lot to the table. Thanks. That's the kind of suggestions you see. And it's not just in football. You've seen this with LeBron James too. Here's a piece from 2015. The headline reads, LeBron James wants to make sure Cleveland brings everyone back before resigning. Per Chris B. Haynes of Cleveland.com at the time, the belief is James wants to observe how management goes about retaining and accumulating assets to keep the organization in win-now mode and improve the roster. The chance of James bolting the city of Cleveland for a second time is slim. But his approach will allow him to assess the Cavaliers' moves before resigning. It also applies pressure on the organization to do whatever is necessary to strengthen the team. And that's something LeBron does. He signs these short contracts, and he believes that it is going to pressure the organization to listen to him and do everything he asks of them while he is there. But if you keep on giving the proverbial mouse, the proverbial cookie, that person is going to walk all over you, and when you're out of cookies, he's just going to leave. I suppose maybe I should be making a giving tree metaphor, allegory. James Harden kind of did the same thing with the Houston Rockets. He was asking them to do all sorts of things for him over the course of his time there. Asked them to get rid of Kevin McHale, Dwight Howard, Chris Paul. Russell Westbrook actually asked out on him. And then eventually, when things finally weren't going in the direction he wanted, he said, I'm out, and just quit. Got traded to the Nets to the Sixers. All of a sudden, he's scoring 40-plus points in the playoffs. And he might end up being back in Houston very, very soon, which is a massive bummer. All I'm trying to say here is that you can't listen and follow every single ask, request, or thought that a player has if you're an organization. Even if we're talking about a superstar player or a superstar quarterback or just a good quarterback. CJ Stroud at this point in his football life is a rookie. We don't know what he's going to be. I'm excited that the Texans drafted him, but please spare me with this idea that CJ Stroud going into the office and telling Nick Caserio to draft Tank Dell is the reason they drafted Tank Dell. And there's a lot of people running with that. It's a naive line of thinking. You're better than that, I think. Maybe you're not. Anyway, what else do we have to dive into? Sheena Herrera says, I hope it was not too much drama and he basically sabotaged the games. Are you talking about Harden in that situation? I would imagine so, because Russ didn't sabotage any of the games, but Harden did show up seemingly just in bad shape and not giving the remotest of shits, which was pretty frustrating, at least for me. And now this guy's going to end up probably being back in town. Ay caramba. Anyway, you got any more questions about that story with CJ Stroud? And this idea that the Texans drafted Tank Dell because C.J. Stroud demanded that the Texans do it. Just think a little harder about that next time and how realistic that actually is. Sheena was talking about James Harden. Speaking of sabotage, your favorite television shows might be getting sabotaged by the Writers Guild of America on strike. So they've been on strike for the majority of the month. I think they went officially on strike on Monday, May 1st. I am somebody that realizes that I'm very replaceable in the industry that I work in. I'm replaceable not necessarily because there's so much talent that's on the same level as me. I am replaceable because there are a ton of people who want to do my job, and even if they are slightly lesser in talent, they're going to be willing to do it for cheap because for many people, talking about sports or whatever for a living, just talking for a living in general, is something you'd kill for. I'm thankful I have this job every single day for now. Eventually, what's going to happen? What happens to everybody? You get God eventually. To go for an entire career until you voluntarily choose to leave in broadcast media, it's very, very rare. It sure does happen, but now I'm not just competing with people who went to school for journalism degrees for jobs. I'm competing with people that are doing YouTube and TikTok on their own, podcasts, etc. And I realize that some of these people, even if they don't have a formal education, are just as good at this shit as me. I get it. I like to think I'm a little bit more entertaining, maybe a little bit more honest, but we're all replaceable in this industry. So when I saw that the Writers Guild of America was going on strike, I thought for a long second about how they expect to win here. And I'll admit, I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to what a comedy writer or a television show writer does. I do know, though, that 11,000 writers are on strike. They work for Amazon. They work for Fox. They work for Disney. And there will be some casualties along the way. I would say specifically television shows that you like that are still in production. For anyone who remembers the writer's strike back in 2008, 2009, you might have noticed your favorite television show had a rough little year. I will point to my favorite show in college, Friday Night Lights. I was in on that show before everybody else was. I'm so cool. I liked the band before everybody else did. I liked it before it was mainstream. Largobot's asking if the Brazzers writers are going to be impacted by this. Listen, maybe not. There's not a lot of writing that goes on in porn. But I'm wondering how they expect to win here. I think more people are going to end up getting got. And I think that the talented people will survive. But I think a lot of people who are going on strike with the big fish of the writer's world are going to end up getting fucked because of this. I mean, we do live in a world where now ChatGPT and other artificial intelligence programs can create a script or a story or write a blog. And your best weapon, sadly, in an industry where so many people want to break in, is your availability. And if I were one of these writers, and I'm, hoping that I'm going to get more out of going on strike, but you're going to get more for the people at the top. This is one of the reasons that the NFL has such a hard time actually getting what it wants, the players I'm talking about, from the owners. There's so many players, and any CBA gains, collective bargaining agreement gains, they're going to be realized by the guys who are good, who will be in the league for like 5 to 10 years. If you're a journeyman player or somebody who's just trying to get their 3 years in the NFL so that they can get pension, you don't want to strike. You want to be on the field and you want to make sure that you have a job. You only get maybe a couple of years to play. You want every opportunity you can to play. And it's why these generally get struck down so quickly. And this is not me trying to be a suit or a bootlicker or something like this. I'm just telling you from a real perspective, you don't have the leverage you think you do, and this isn't going to help you the way that you would think it would. Now, what does the Writers Guild Association of America, or whatever the fuck it is, the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers, couldn't get to an agreement with the Writers Guild of America? There's a piece that I saw on entertainment.com or entertainmentw.com. I don't know. I guess it's entertainment.com. It has a couple of little paragraphs, and it says, what happens to late night shows? Because there's a lot of writers that work on late night shows. And I don't want to hate on late night shows, but like, who the fuck still watches a late night television show? I imagine most people who have migrated to YouTube, you might watch YouTube clips of a TV show. Maybe you watched like Carpool Karaoke with James Corden. That show's about to go bye-bye. Maybe you used to watch Conan O'Brien back in the day. I don't know, guys. I really don't know. I don't know anyone who watches late night TV. Hell, I don't even really watch Saturday Night Live anymore. So imagine that's your bread and butter. And right now you're, along with the rest of the Writers Guild Association, you're forced to go on strike. Okay, so now you're going to stop earning money, and this is a dying medium as it is. The one way that you could potentially stay on is if you make your mark in some way, somehow, in some sort of production meeting before doing a TV show of some sorts. And now that's gone. I would say that's probably the same for network TV shows, though at least network TV shows do production in advance. And I would say for streaming shows, which also produce shows well in advance, say you are in on some great project, all of a sudden you might be fucked. I suppose the many can accomplish things, but The many are going to get things done for a few people. And I imagine there will be massive layoffs in this industry once this thing comes to a head. And the talented, established people are going to be the ones that are safe. A couple of comments. Jeffrey Smith says, late night TV was never my thing. SNL is too woke. Yeah, I think that there are some occasionally good moments that go viral on Saturday Night Live, but it does feel like all late night TV started to trend in a specific direction politically over the last couple of years. I'm going to read a couple of comments that have to do with the Houston Texans from YouTube, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Rick Hagwood says, Casario went to the U of H Pro Day and saw Tank with his own eyes. The pick was probably mentioned to CJ, and he probably said, yeah, go get him. I think he would be great to play with. That is more logical than what NFL rookie walk put up there, because he's got an X there instead of a C. Sheena Herrera, I'm just enjoying the fact that we did get all the draft picks that we got. They addressed the issues that we have. Maybe not the big names that people wanted, but headed in the right direction. Well, I mean, you got two big names. You got CJ Stroud, you got Will Anderson. Yeah, you got some big names here. Haywood, Nick and Miko have done a good job putting together a team in free agency, the drafted, undrafted free agency. This team will only have a handful of players from last year. This is the new Texans. A handful, I think, is strong because you still have Laramie Tunsil. You still have Titus Howard. You still have Kenyon Green. You still have Damian Pierce, Jalen Petrie, Christian Harris, Derek Stingley, some of the tight ends, Brevin Jordan, Tegan Quarantino. You have, I think, Roy Lopez, Malik Collins, Jerry Hughes on the defensive side of things. There are some holdovers. So I don't think it's a handful. I think it's a better team, though. I will say that. Rick Hagwood says also, they knew they were taking CJ a long time ago and put players together to match his skill set. No, that's not how it works. They're going to look at the best players they possibly can get, and they're going to draft him. You don't draft players to tandem with the quarterback. Your expectation is that when you find a talented player, you're going to be able to make it work. That's how it goes. Two handfuls. Yeah, that's maybe more appropriate. Sheena says, we took KC to overtime, almost beat Dallas. Better coaching staff, better players. Easier schedule. AFC South, NFC South. Cardinals are the random NFC team that you drew. Worst team in the league, I think, going into this coming season. You're in pretty good shape. I think you're in pretty good shape as far as the schedule. I think 6-7 is well within reach. And talked about that actually on the most recent episode of the Talkin' Texans podcast that I do with DJ Bien Aimé of ESPN.com. That's once a week. G-Man says, what's up? Hey, what's going on? And speaking of what's going on with the Royals? I think a lot of people are curious about what happened over the weekend with old King Charles. I was mostly focused on this story. And it comes to us from the Daily Record. Giant penis mown onto Royal Crescent lawn before King's coronation party. That's fun. You want to actually see the image? Look. Wow. I got to say, that's impressive lawn work right there. I wonder if they were able to get rid of that by the time the man was coronated. King Charles stepping in for Queen Elizabeth. Here's another picture of it in case you want another look. I think if you were looking at it from the ground level, you would probably have a difficult time seeing what it actually is from the sky. Kind of bummed out that this isn't something that they just stumbled across in the middle of the actual coronation ceremony over the weekend. You guys want to watch the coronation ceremony? Huh? Want to watch it? Look at these guys. They're so cute. The limeys with their king and their queen who don't do shit. So cute. If you could watch this, youtube.com/Paul Gallant, twitch.tv/ESPN, Gallant says, King Charles III was crowned, what does it say? In a ceremony full of pomp, ritual, and symbolism. Here are the key moments. Okay, so they're wearing their cute little hats here and waving. I'm Now they're in this golden carriage. You should have taken a car, honestly. Seems like this would perhaps allow for the biggest disaster since the Kennedys. You're moving in a slow-moving, horse-drawn carriage. Although that carriage does look like it has bulletproof glass. So, going down. Waiting for them were over 2,000 guests, including heads of state, religious leaders, and family friends. Prince Harry walked into the Abbey just behind his uncle, Prince Andrew. He's got to get some propecia. You know, he's got to do something about the crown. Right? Come on now. If it starts to go like that, do something about it. Get a little Rogaine. I'm telling you, it works. I've actually had that. I've had a little propecia. You know, receding hairline when I was in Seattle. Westminster Abbey has been the site of British coronation since 1066. Charles is the 40th monarch to be crowned there, and the 10th since the 1776 U.S. Declaration of Independence. See, the sad thing is, the people know that the Americans are fascinated with the weird shit that the Limeys do. I don't get our fascination with it. After receiving royal regalia, including jeweled swords and an orb and scepters, King Charles III was crowned by the Archbishop of Canterbury using St. Edward's crown, which dates from 1661. It's a stupid-looking crown, right? Like, can't you modernize it a little bit? And can we also talk about how old this guy looks? Look, it was cute when Queen Elizabeth was the one running the show, right? Because she's like a cute old lady and she'd been running the show since essentially World War II. But imagine on national display, you're coronating some fucking guy in his like 70s or 80s. Like, is this a good look for your country? Look at this guy. He's dying. What the hell is it about where we are today in the world where old people like King Charles here have so much power and everyone looks at them and you see how frail and weak they are and you probably don't think much of their intelligence and their faculties at this point in their life. Twitch.tv/triple-aught-shot is saying, I do not watch nor give a rat's ass about the Royals. I don't either, but I'm just bummed out that we make these grand displays for clearly old folks that don't look like they know where they are anymore. And this is not just unique to England with their cute little king and queen who don't do shit. They're just symbolic folks, right? How about, I don't know, the fact that a couple of weeks ago we saw this video.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans. There's
We didn't have a lot of that during the pandemic.
nothing more important, nothing more sacred. That's been the work of my first term, to
Except for during the pandemic.
fight for our democracy. This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
It shouldn't be a red or blue issue that Joe Biden looks like he doesn't know where he is. But it's
Protect our
fine.
rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But you
Ooh,
know,
fear
around the
porn.
country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms. Cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy. Dictating what health care decisions women can make. Banning books and telling people who they can love. All while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote.
Ooh, slow motion walking. Showed a lot of Kamala Harris here. I don't think people really like her either, but that's just me. I'm trying to be apolitical here. We're just watching a trailer that's hyping up an old politician who, when it's not a pre-produced video, looks like he's lost. Ooh,
When I ran for president
hug
4 years
something
ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America. and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent.
But isn't that what like our entire lives have been, watching politicians? Like, what's really changed in our entire life? Like, I'm 34 years old, and I've seen enough politicians now to be like, they're all the same, left or right. It's promises, fear mongering, and then what's after that? Anyway, this video continues. It's Joe Biden's a trailer for his announcement of his presidential campaign.
That's why I'm running for re-election.
Fuck!
Because
Look, here's the thing. I can't even watch the rest of this. Apolitical take. Can we just have somebody that's not one of these two fuckers? Is it that hard? That's it. That's all we want. I would like to have someone who looks like he knows where he is, or someone who doesn't piss off well over half of the country whenever he speaks. Can we just get somebody that's not an old fossil? And when are we going to get that? Am I going to be in my 40s, the time that somebody around my age gets elected into a major position? And I get that there's age limits for a lot of seats in government. But can we just get somebody that's not dead? That's it. That's all I'm asking for. Or completely disliked. Like, we're doing the exact same election that we did last time around. How can anyone feel good about that? How do either of these parties feel good about that unless they're both like, hey, got an idea. How about we get everybody pissed off at each other again and just keep on doing the same thing we've always been doing? Little wink here, little wink there. Like, that's what it feels like. Because I think the vast majority of Americans are like, really? We're running this fucking guy back? And then all of a sudden, oh, wait, DeSantis has just vanished. And now we're bringing Trump back into the equation. But what seems to be a less entertaining version of Trump. So we're not even getting all the fucking bullshit that he brings to the table that's also sometimes funny in a fucked up way. Alas, this is the country we live in. Born in the USA. Anyway, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We do this Monday through Thursday, 6 to 6:30, live at youtube.com/Paul Gallant or twitch.tv/Gallant Says. It's also available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You got any questions? gallantsays@gmail.com is how you can email me. You can also shoot me a tweet or a message at Gallant Says on Twitter, at Gallant Says Pod on Twitter, at Gallant Says on the gram, at Gallant Says on TikTok. So long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful Monday. We'll be back at it tomorrow night.